you got to wait 15 days before you can send them your pay or quit possession notice. Now it's a 30-day pay or quit possession notice. So that means you can't even file the eviction for 45 days. And that's brutal. And that's if it's uncontested.
You're listening to 5 Hour Real Estate Week, where you'll learn to consistently buy real estate in only 5 hours a week. So if you're ready to invest in real estate, achieve financial freedom, and own the lifestyle you deserve, even with your job, this is the show for you. Now, here's your host, Mike Butler.
Okay, and hello and welcome to another episode of the 5 Hour Real Estate Week. I'm Mike Butler, and today's topic that we're going to talk about is the eviction moratorium really over? Don't hold your breath on this one. Now, I just finished up a training session with a bunch of investors, and I feel compelled to let you know what to expect. As you guys know, the Supreme Court recently threw out President Biden's executive order extending the eviction moratorium to October 31st. And a legal team who cares for our interests as rental property owners and real estate investors, they took it to the Supreme Court, and there was an overwhelming decision that said President Biden is out of line, that his executive order is unconstitutional, and only Congress can authorize that. Well, if you recall, back on July the 31st, when the eviction moratorium did expire from the CDC, President Biden wanted Congress to create a bill and pass a bill for extending the eviction moratorium. Well, something happened. He was too late to request that, and Congress was adjourned, and they were off on some kind of break of some sort, vacation, I don't know. And so here's what I expect to happen. Don't hold your breath on this. Although the Supreme Court is on our side, okay, and they said that President Biden it's unconstitutional for him to issue an executive order like that, extending eviction moratorium. Supreme Court overturned that. So now evictions are back on, okay? But don't hold your breath. Here's what I expect to happen. With all this, everything since COVID started and all the civil unrest and all that throughout the country, the government and these anti-investor, anti-landlord people wanted all the tenants to get on this let's not pay rent bandwagon. They owe us money. And the tenants been living the lifestyle of the rich and famous, while the poor mom and pop investors get stuck. They still have to make mortgage payments. When we get started, if you started out with nothing like I did, you'll have loans on these properties, okay? You got to make these house payments, these loan payments. So here's what I expect to happen. I look for Congress. Somebody in Congress is going to be an anti-landlord. And somebody in Congress is going to be very pro-tenant. So I look for Congress they only do stuff fast when they want to. And so I look for them to come up with some kind of law where they're going to extend the eviction moratorium. I haven't heard anything about it. I've not read anything about it yet, but I am behind on my emails. So be prepared for that. So in the meantime, you might think, well, if I got tenants that haven't paid rent, I can evict them. Well, hold on. Bill Taylor, who you heard on a podcast, 40-year investor up in Carmel, Indiana, he said 2020 is the best year he ever had. I'll happen to agree with him on that. And he's had rental properties for well over 40 years, and that's pretty good. And that's because of that financial assistance and things that we can get paid. Now, the financial assistance that you get where government's giving your tenant money to pay your rent all the way back to March 2020 and 3 months in advance, well, it's got a lot of strings attached to it. So read the fine print in there. For example, one of them is if you sign up for the financial assistance program for your tenant, it says this basically: if they don't pay rent, so you get 3 months paid in advance, and let's say so that next month they don't pay rent. Well, you got to follow the guidelines in the fine print that says you got to wait 15 days before you can send them your pay or quit possession notice. And that is, in my town, it was 7 days. No, now it's a 30-day pay or quit possession notice. So that means you can't even file the eviction for 45 days. And that's brutal. And that's if it's uncontested. So stay tuned for that. Well, now what they've done is they've added, we used to be able to evict if their lease expired. So if their lease expired during the eviction moratorium, we could file an eviction if they don't move out, saying that's a lease violation because their lease is expired, we're not renewing. And so you can do that legally. And so we did that on several. And so now the people that hate us, they've added more paragraphs in the financial assistance program, one of which says you cannot evict if you don't renew their lease. What? So anyway, my point is this: read the fine print. The legal world is all in a frenzy right now. Not just, think about this. When a law changes at federal level, when Supreme Court said Biden's eviction moratorium was outlawed, illegal, well, now there's a mad rush. And so who's the mad rush for? Yeah, of course, us. We love it. We're going to do Toyota Happy Dance. We love it. But my real estate attorney, my gladiator attorney, we couldn't have our regular Monday meeting because he was filing evictions for all the landlords that he represents to get them on the docket. In the first available day, right in my town, 9,000 eviction cases on the docket for one day. Crazy insane. So now the legal world, which is the attorneys, the courthouse, the judges, we used to have one judge. Our judges rotate in our smaller court system, and we would have one judge for the eviction court. Now they got four because they see this tsunami coming along and they want to try to process these things faster. So don't expect things to go back to normal the way they were before March of 2020. That includes the sheriff's department who does the set outs, at least in my town. They'll get a court order, send it to the sheriff's department, and the sheriff's the one that goes and executes that warrant to do what we call a set out. So don't expect that to go back to normal. Another thing I want you to pay attention to real quick is a lot of times these government agency staff members and representatives, whether it's government, a nonprofit, who knows what, that's offering some kind of financial assistance, they're calling landlords on the phone now, and they're lying to them to get them to participate and sign up. Okay, so if any person representing any kind of agency, nonprofit, or this and that, offering assistance, financial assistance to your tenant, they tell you something on the phone, try to record it if you can. My office, all calls are recorded. And number two, tell that person, said, okay, that sounds great, but I want you to send it to me in an email because I want you to get it in writing. If you don't get it in writing, you don't have any ammo to support what they lied to you about. And tell them to send it to you in email. If they say, I can't do that, well, then send it to me in a fax. And if they say, I can't do that, well, then do snail mail. But don't take action on a verbal statement made by one of these staffers. So with that, guys, that wraps up this one. Be careful, stay tuned, and we'll see you on the next one. Adios.
Glad you joined us for another episode of 5-Hour Real Estate Week. The best thing you can do now is put this information to action. To help you get started, Mike created a free resource for you called How to Buy 50 Houses a Year, Even with Your Job. Download it now by going to mikebutler.com/50 houses. And we'll see you on the next episode.